It's time to have your say because it's time for the Q&A. Welcome to Ask SCW here on SCW, here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Answering your questions in the wrestling community once again. If you want to get involved, then you can leave a comment here on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all should be coming up on your screen right about now. Leave the hashtag AskSCW. I know to give you a shout out and answer your question in the next video. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. This week we've got plenty of questions on AEW, WWE, NXT, much more. So let's get straight into it with our first question from Noob & Co. And Noob asks, what are your thoughts on Sting's debut in AEW? Who do you think Charlotte Flair will feud outside of the women's title when she returns? And last but not least, will there be a working relationship between AEW and Impact Wrestling? Well, we'll come back onto the AEW stuff very shortly, but I'm going to start with the Charlotte Flair question so I can have a bit of those sort of companies kept together. So with Charlotte Flair, I think the logical way she comes back is to feud with Nia Jax, because Nia Jax is the person that wrote her off of TV, and I know a lot of people probably not so keen to see Charlotte Flair back in the championship picture, but I do feel that there is a slim chance she could be in it by WrestleMania. But one thing I will say is for sure, the Raw Women's division, for Charlotte in particular, is a lot fresher than it's been for many years. I mean, you look at Shayna Baszler as a potential person she could feud with, Alexa Bliss, she's had a match with her in the past, but never a full-length feud. Nikki Cross is there, we've got Naomi, we've got lots of people that can come in there and give fresh matches, but I do expect WWE will go back and have a match with her and Asuka somewhere down the line. In fact, I still have the prediction that Charlotte Flair will return at the Royal Rumble, and to even make that a bolder prediction, I think she comes back at the number 1 or number 2 position and does the journeyman role in the Royal Rumble. That way she hasn't got to win the match, but she can make a dominant presence on her return, as WWE always likes to keep Charlotte Flair looking strong. I do have a feeling that her WrestleMania match this year coming up will be a rematch against Rhea Ripley as well. I think that they will try and correct what was done at last year's WrestleMania, and that's of course if Rhea Ripley is brought to Monday Night Raw between now and then. But we'll have to wait and see. But I think Charlotte Flair, as a first step coming back outside of the Women's Championship picture, I will go for Nia Jax, as I think it makes the most logical booking sense. Let's move on to the stinger, shall we, into AEW and why this is such a great and big signing for AEW. And I may have said this on a couple of videos in the past, but this for me is why it's such a big deal. Sting was on TNT for the first time in nearly 20 years. This is big time for TNT, for those old school wrestling fans looking back at a demographic that was, you know, idolizing wrestling back in the 90s, watching religiously on TNT. They have that moment to say, I need to go back and see that moment of Sting. What's even bigger this week, Sting will speak to Tony Schiavone and say why he's there in AEW, which I'm sure a lot of people are interested in. There are many fans of Sting who probably look at his time in WWE and say, that's not the way we wanted the icon to finish his career. Maybe he finishes it now on his own terms. Maybe he's good enough to do 1 or 2 more matches, and we can have potential, arguably dream matches that they could be built as in AEW, and that way Sting can go into the sunset the way he wants to. Maybe it's in a tag team environment. Maybe he could even be a mentor for someone like Darby Allin. I mean, he stared at Darby for a long time this week, and a lot of people think that that is a natural draw for chemistry in a way that Sting could put Darby Allin over to the next level. And of course, that is one of the big differences as well, why Sting coming in is such a good thing, and why perhaps a lot of people look when Goldberg comes back to WWE and is seen as a bad thing. I don't think Sting is coming in and becoming AEW World Champion, defeating your top superstars in 2 or 3 minutes. I think that Sting comes in, he's there to elevate talent. He's there to make stars off of his name and build people for the future. He's not going to be there to have, you know, the limelight for himself. Yes, he's had that big moment coming in. That debut is going to be a special moment in wrestling history, in AEW history. But I look at this and I turn around and say to myself that I think Sting is in AEW for the right reasons. And you look at AEW, they are winning the Wednesday Night War. Is there even a war at this point? They're winning so many weeks over NXT. It just doesn't feel like there's even a war to begin with. But AEW have got themselves to a nice platform of between, I'd say, a healthy 700,000-800,000 viewers on average each week. They want to push that higher, and a way to do that is to try and bring in some more star power to give people a reason that have not been tuning in to tune in. And Sting is a great reason for that, because Sting, he's an old school name. He'll bring people that have not been watching wrestling for a long time. They'll be interested. They'll want to see what is happening. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there going, it's great he's back in, but please don't have him wrestle. That's still fine. They still might be interested in what he's going to do. AEW's journey now is probably to try and get themselves whether 1 million viewers each and every week, and after that build it to 1.2, 1.5. They're going to take baby steps to try and grow this company as each step goes along, and Sting is just one piece in that puzzle. And I think personally, strategically, I think it's a clever move to do, because Sting, like I say, so much history with TNT. It's a romance that he never wanted to finish, and I think if WCW had stayed for the last 20 years, he'd have never stepped foot in WWE, TNA, Impact. He'd have always been involved in WCW in some format, whether it be a GM or whatever, a manager, whatever. He would have been involved there as a trainer, a booker, whatever it would have been. Sting would have been WCW to the bitter end. So for me, I think it's a great thing, and we'll have to wait and see how it will play out. Moving on to the next question, and I have to give a shout out to Dylan Ketchum as well, who's asked the same question of, do you think the AEW Impact are going to have a partnership? Well, it appears so after this week, especially. But the thing is, though, this has been ticking in the works in the background in both companies for a little while. And the thing is that as a wrestling fan, we've not even noticed it. It's just, the rug has been pulled from beneath us. No one saw this coming. I mean, Don Callis made his first appearance, it seemed, on Jericho's 30th anniversary, giving, that speech about how great Jericho's been throughout his career. We didn't think anything of it. Just, oh, great, Don Callis was featured on AEW. He then comes on commentary for one of Kenny Omega's matches at Full Gear. He's then back here for the championship match, and then boom, we get this big fallout at the end of AEW, Kenny Omega winning the championship with the help of Don Callis. They both escape the arena. What's going on? Everyone in AEW upset. Tony Khan, the superstars backstage. What's going to happen? When are we going to find out what's going to happen? Don Callis says, well, Tuesday night. And it's not AEW Dark, it's going to be Impact Wrestling. The partnership has started. And like I said, this has not just been one side, it's arguably been both sides. Moose, in his feud with EC3 very recently, had his championship stolen from him from EC3 and he wanted to get it back. He phoned Chris Jericho on advice on how to get it back. Now, we didn't see Jericho's face, we didn't see anything to do with Chris Jericho on Impact Wrestling, but the name drop was there. Something was there, and it was made some sort of, note of it. Now Kenny Omega will be featured in some format this week on Impact Wrestling. So it kind of feels like this partnership has been in the works for a little while, and we only have to look with, past, things before where, Impact was going to bring back the TNA One Night Show. They were going to go back and do things old school, and the Young Bucks were heavily interested in being involved for that. That never got to happen. It feels like that this has been sort of in the works for a long time. And what's even more exciting, something I will just add to this before I finish off this question, is that New Japan is something that's been teased a little bit on both sides of Impact and AEW as well. Footage has been shown of Lance Archer and Jon Moxley on AEW. Tanahashi has given a speech for Chris Jericho as well. And we look at the Good Brothers, they want to be involved with New Japan. Chris Bay, an Impact superstar, has been actually wrestling for New Japan as well. I believe actually this week he's been doing that. So, I mean, it feels like we could be about to get some mega partnership here with all these promotions when the pandemic, arguably, I won't say finishes, but, we can actually get all these companies can really work together and have talent exchange. This would be really exciting and something that really could be mind-blowing in the wrestling industry. I want to make a comparison very quickly to WCW because we mentioned here about AEW earlier on with, trying to build their stock and Sting being one piece of the puzzle. I mean, one thing that WCW did very well back in the 90s when they brought in Nitro, they worked with New Japan Pro Wrestling all through the 90s. We had the likes of the Great Muta come in, Masachono. I think Sonny Ono obviously was a manager and brought him in as well. Yuji Nagata was another one through about 96, 97 period as well. And you look at it as well, they had like all the luchadors coming in from AAA from Mexico, the likes of Conan, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, all were kind of coming in via this. So as well as bringing in these big top stars, they were working with all these other companies to make their company as good as as it could be, the talent pool in WCW at that point was mouthwatering, and it feels like that this is what that partnership is trying to represent. Dream matches, opportunities for superstars to work perhaps more than one different show, a great opportunity for not only shows to build their stock, because it will work great for both companies. AEW, you look at it and say, if they can work together in that sort of format, the women's division will be, help massively for AEW, and Impact Wrestling will get the star power. The likes of Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho might show up on one of these shows, the Young Bucks, and all of a sudden the ratings just go up on both shows. The talents get noticed as well, and their star power rises. It's a really exciting time, and that's why I think, yes, this is a partnership, and yes, it's a very exciting time in pro wrestling. Keeping on the same theme here, Know the Ropes podcast. What do you think Impact Wrestling and AEW's wrestling plans are after Omega's title victory? Well, that's the key part here, because we've all got really excited after Dynamite. Now the plan needs to be executed, and what a way to execute it, by having Kenny Omega show up on Impact Wrestling this coming week. It's going to be the highest rated Impact arguably for years. This is almost as big a deal as if you go back to like TNA history. This is like Kurt Angle turning up. This is a massive deal, a massive shock. Perhaps even like Jeff Hardy back in 2010, when he'd only left WWE a couple of months previously. This is massive, and honestly, this is going to be the placeholder of whether the excitement remains or whether perhaps a few people might get disappointed. I do think that what we're going to get on Impact, obviously the shows have already been taped, so something that we're going to get, I don't think it's going to be, something that's going to be perhaps in the ring. This could be something backstage, something that's just broadcasted on Impact Television. But the storyline goes here, what's going to happen? Is it going to be that Kenny Omega simply says, well, look, I'm a part of Impact Wrestling going forward, and there's a big thing there that AEW champion's defected to another company. Maybe he fights on Final Resolution, of course, which is the next Impact special, which is on the weekend after that. Would be a great platform to put people to go to Impact Plus as well. There's lots of different avenues that they can go down. I really hope it's the start of some sort of invasion angle. I really hope that that's where they put it together, because despite the fact that arguably someone from Impact and AEW is working together, I want to see that this is a platform of where we can try and get Impact talents over to AEW Dynamite on a regular basis to, invade that show, and get AEW talents to invade on Impact. I think that would be a really exciting platform. I mean, look at Jon Moxley. He was attacked backstage. There's so many more suspects now. We're all going for the AEW roster going, who attacked Moxley? Well, he's faced Brody Lee, he's faced Lance Archer. What if it's someone from Impact Wrestling? What if Don Callis has put someone in from Impact to go and take Jon Moxley out? What if it's Sami Callihan? What a dream match that could be. There's lots of different ideas and ways that they can put this together. I think an invasion is the best way to go forward, because I think that is what will get people most excited and would want to see. I think that or the championship hostage situation is the two most likely. Maybe it could build to one super show. And of course, hard to kill for Impact Wrestling is the January pay-per-view, because AEW's next one is Revolution, which I believe is the end of February. Maybe, just maybe, these one or two pay-per-views could end up being super shows where talents arguably are exchanged. We have head-to-head combat. It could be really exciting. And I have to say kudos to everyone that's put this in place. I think it's really exciting, really inventive, and as a wrestling fan who's been watching for many, many years, this is the most excited I've been in a storyline for what feels like years. I'm really excited for what they're doing here. Next question coming from Vigilante. Opinion, some dream matches. Motor City Machine Guns against FTR, the Young Bucks against the North, Sami Callihan versus Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho versus Eric Young, and Eddie Edwards versus Kenny Omega. Well, that's the thing, you see. This is what I said in the last question here about how the invasion seems the most appealing. The dream matches are endless, depending on what side of the fence you lay on. Whether it's Impact, you could be someone that's like, well, look, I'm an Impact fan. I'm really, buzzing about these talents, and I can't wait to see this superstar face this superstar from AEW, and vice versa. And it can be like these all-rounded wrestling fans who like all these promotions who turn around and say this and this would be really exciting. I like all the matches that you have actually put down there, particularly the Young Bucks versus the North is one that I find particularly exciting. And also I'd have to say Sami Callihan against Jon Moxley. Like I said in the last one, if Callihan was the person that took out Jon Moxley, that for me feels like it would be a great match. It would be almost like a blood feud between these two, because both are treated like badasses. They're both up for hardcore wrestling. The promo work would be awesome. I just think that would be a really exciting encounter to see. So yeah, I mean, for me, the dream matches are endless, and I think that it's certainly, as I said, it's a very exciting time. But this is a great opportunity for me to give a plug for one of my other videos that I posted yesterday. It's 15 dream matches, AEW versus Impact Wrestling. Check it out. Rest of this video first, and I will leave it the link at the end of the video, so it'll be easy just to click on and you can go and check out from there, or you just go to the channel and you can click on it and watch it there. So but yeah, it's definitely worth checking out, and like I say, I think there's certainly many dream matches you can have there with AEW and Impact. Next question coming from George Jones. Mr. Jones, he chats wrestling. Go and give him a subscribe on YouTube. Definitely deserves more subscribers. Great content. Go and check out George now with Jonesy Chats Wrestling. He's asking, how would you book NXT to start competing with AEW following last week's show? And of course, that is the most other compelling question, because we've got the excitement in with AEW, Impact Wrestling. Let's go to the other side, shall we? NXT. I mean, I said there isn't really a Wednesday Night War anyway anymore. I mean, NXT has lost however many nights here. It doesn't feel like a war, but saying that, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And of course, WWE back in the day lost to WCW for how many weeks upon end, and then did manage to turn it around eventually. So it's not beyond, reason that NXT can't make a comeback. There's a lot of people that said, obviously, with Sting coming in, that they should bring in some of the legends, bring them back. I've seen all the joke names of Undertaker, CM Punk, or whatever. For me, I mean, if you're going to bring older wrestlers in, I mean, as just to bring it as a subject here, and perhaps these big stars, if you want, I just look and say, I don't think that is the best avenue to go, because I think it takes away from what NXT's identity represents. And I think that is the problem of what we've had here, because if you look back at NXT, we have been spoiled since 2012. NXT has done a great weekly television show, and then they followed it on with giving us takeovers, some spectacular pay-per-views, and honestly, we've had 5-star after 5-star after 5-star takeovers. We've almost come to expect that a 7 or 8 out of 10 show from NXT is a disappointment. That's how high of a bar NXT has set of the standards over the last 8 years. But you are not wrong in saying that NXT needs to make some form of comeback when it comes to actually facing AEW on a Wednesday night. And the thing is, in one way, it's unfair to make the comparison, because NXT is WWE's third show. It's definitely the third show. It's presented like the indie show. The superstars that come in, that make it from the indies to NXT, build themselves to what's seen as a close enough household name as you can get, where they feel this person is ready for Raw or SmackDown. And I think that NXT has still done that. But you look at people that have stayed in there long overdue, that should have been going up to Raw or SmackDown. Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, Undisputed Era. These people should have already gone to Raw or SmackDown if you consider what NXT is supposed to represent. They've kept those superstars back because they need to have star power going into this Wednesday Night War against AEW, a company that is their version of Raw and SmackDown, putting out, in a bigger sort of environment their shows are in Daily's Place compared to what is the Capitol Wrestling Center. But NXT need to change this. They need to do something. And what they need to do, for me, most importantly, as I said, is not bringing in someone like Triple H for one of these style matches. If you had to bring someone in, I mean, you look, one of their recent wins was someone like Kevin Owens coming in for a week. Now, Kevin Owens is someone that's been in NXT before. Arguably, it's still, in my opinion, he's been booked here for the TLC match. What looks to be a good built feud so far with Roman Reigns, I still don't believe it's going on for longer than a month. Kevin Owens will be lost in the shuffle come February. We will not have a clear direction, in my opinion, on WWE TV, not to what the capability that Kevin Owens presents anyway. Why not bring Kevin Owens back to NXT? Because that is the sort of thing that does boost ratings on the short term. It's just, it doesn't fully represent what NXT is all about. But where NXT you look at as a show, this is what they need to address, in my opinion. The women's division is arguably the best women's division in the world, alongside Impact Wrestling. Those are the best two women's divisions out there. They don't need to improve that. It's flawless. When you look at the tag team division, it's been lacking so much for the whole of this calendar year. It feels like now they are going to address that. The grizzled young veterans, and I really wanted to do that in Zach Gibson's voice there for a second, them coming in will make a big difference, in my opinion, because Zach Gibson has natural heel heat. Him and James Drake are a fantastic tag team. Of course, they were the first NXT UK tag team champions, and they will really bring something to NXT, along with Imperium that's there. And now we've got the Rascals have signed as well, of course, with Wentz and Dez. Not Trey as of yet, but they are signed. I don't think it'll be long till they're on TV. We've got Only Lorcan and Danny Burch. We do have Breezango, and we've got Drake Maverick and Killian Dane. There's a tag team division there. They can start building on it. We need to get the tag team championships defended again on takeovers. That stopped happening. And now you might say that's probably a minor part of the show. Let's go to the other thing that's really crippling the show, in my opinion, is the top championship, the heavyweight division. Now, if you look at it, since, August, when Karrion Kross won the championship from Keith Lee, and Keith Lee left NXT, that is where NXT really, for me, has started to suffer, because from that point onwards, Karrion Kross got injured. We then had to crown a new champion in Finn Balor. Finn Balor's now been off TV for 7 or 8 weeks, and if you look around the top heavyweight division, it's a bit empty in NXT. Yes, Adam Cole was there. Yes, Gargano was there, but Adam Cole's, feuding with Pat McAfee. He can go back in the championship picture, but he was champion for 400 days. It kind of feels like copy and paste if we put the belt straight back on him. Ciampa is a different option. He's not been champion for a while. That kind of feels like that could fit. Him and Balor would be quite interesting. Karrion Kross coming back as well. You'd start getting a bit of a main event scene again with those guys. But you need to start building some of these mid-carders up, because we said about NXT is meant to be the future. And there's a lot of people that are in that mid-card territory in NXT. We need to start pushing 1 or 2 of these guys, whether it's Dexter Lumis, Timothy Thatcher, Damian Priest. We need to start looking at 1 or 2 of these guys saying, who is that next guy? There's someone that's going to give us these amazing takeover main event matches, someone that's going to really steal the show for the next 12 months before we build them for Raw or SmackDown. Someone that actually can be put over by the stars we've got in NXT, like Ciampa, like Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano, because that's what they're still there for now. For me, they're not the guys that should be the top necessarily of the card. They should be helping elevate the talents if they're not going to move to Raw or SmackDown themselves. Their stock doesn't get hurt in NXT, in my opinion, if they lose matches. And that's what we need to do. We need to build for the future. It's almost like a long game for NXT for what they do, but compelling storylines is another thing. They do have compelling storylines, though, NXT. I just feel that they don't have the same interest. I think the other thing they do, they change nights, and I still think that's something that should be done anyway. I think it would benefit both NXT and AEW in the long run. I think if they were on separate nights now, I think AEW is already in 1 million viewers. I think NXT goes up to nearly 900,000. That's my opinion, and I think that they should definitely change nights if they're not going to do all the other stuff they're going to do, or they should do all the stuff I've suggested and change nights. I think those are the things that they should probably look to do, in my opinion, because NXT, previously it's been on a Thursday. I liked it on a Thursday. Hell, I didn't even mind it on a Tuesday, but now you've got Impact on Tuesdays. I personally would choose it to go for Thursdays. You can have NXT UK following it on the WWE networks if you want your 3rd hour fix of it. I think that'd be perfect for me. Those are the things that I would look at doing if it was me. Mike, Atan Habs Mike, with our next 2 questions for us now here on AskSCW. Though NXT Women's Division is very good, I feel it's too heel heavy at the top. Who should turn face, and which mid-card face takes the next step to the top female face? Interesting question, that one there. And the second one is that what is the best unexpected heel turn and the most predictable heel turn? 2 very good questions there, and let's tackle first then NXT, and let's talk about the women's division. As I said in the last question, I think it's arguably one of, if not the best women's division out there. Certainly along Impact Wrestling, they are the best 2 women's divisions anywhere in the wrestling world, in my opinion. For me, I do slightly disagree. I don't think it's too heel heavy at the top. I like the fact that we've got Toni Storm that's turned heel now. We've got a perfect 4-on-4 in the War Games match. Of course, Indy Hartwell is another one that's a candidate there. If we look at other superstars that are on the roster, Aaliyah, yes, she's heel, but we look as well, Xia Li kind of turning heel. So yeah, the heels are building up, but if we look outside of it, we've got Kaden Carter and of course Katy Catanzaro. They're baby faces. Tegan Nox, who's out injured at the moment, she's a big baby face, of course, when she's around. So I do think things are balanced out, but I do think that if I've made my prediction at the start of this video that Rhea Ripley is going to go to the main roster, maybe there is a gap somewhere, like you said, that maybe someone may need to turn face, or maybe someone needs to step up. And one person I think that will step up is Shotzi Blackheart. I do see there's a lot of star power, a lot of potential in her to be the top babyface on NXT, because Io Shirai as well is probably getting to near around the stage where she's been there and done it for NXT, and what happens as she go to Raw or SmackDown after it. We're starting to get these people that are seasoned and been there. So in some ways, I do think that your argument holds ground, and if someone was to turn face from heel, it's a really challenging one to really come up with, but I suppose for me, one that I would look at, I mean, I really enjoy Candice LeRae as a heel. I think that definitely it's give her a lot of personality. Toni Storm's needed a heel turn for a long time. Dakota Kai, we're going to come more on her in your next question that I'm going to answer. So I do wonder if Raquel Gonzalez is the one that could perhaps do it, because I think for her, she could be used by Dakota Kai for a long time, that maybe she's been held back for a long time. That's a natural progressive feud to make her babyface. And I do think that Raquel Gonzalez has a very bright future going forward. I can see her being a multi-time women's champion in Raw and SmackDown somewhere down the line. So for me, if I had to pick one to turn face, that would be the one. But I do think Shotzi is the one that will step up. And I think if Tegan Nox can stay not injured when she does come back, she certainly is a potential being the face of the division. She's very likable. She's very good in ring. And, you know, there's a reason that she's in NXT and not NXT UK. They see her as being someone that could really carry a division. She's just been so unlucky with injuries throughout her career, because otherwise I think she'd already be a multi-time women's champion in WWE. Moving on to heel turns then. Of course, the most unexpected, Dakota Kai is the one I'm going to give you as my answer, because I didn't see that coming last year at War Games, and I literally jaw dropped. For me, it's why it's my favourite TakeOver War Games match in history so far, because of the fact that I just really didn't see it coming. It just... The place erupted as well that was watching him. You know, we talk about live audiences. I mean, God, the NXT, and actually going back to George's question, honestly, NXT is missing its crowd. That is a big part of NXT's identity, and something that I think as a company, or as a promotion, a brand, whatever you want to call it, they are missing fans more than most. NXT was always about that passion, hardcore fan base, and yeah, that's something that's really missing from those shows. And I think that's why it feels quite empty at times watching NXT, and I think that that is probably why some of the interest has gone from NXT as well. So just to give that little extra bit in from the last question to this question, but going back onto it, Dakota Kai for me, for me was wow what happened as a heel turn. Back in the old days, Steve Austin's heel turn, okay, when you look back at it, perhaps it wasn't the best thing for business, Steve Austin turning heel at WrestleMania 17, but for me that is certainly one of the most unexpected heel turns ever. But really, when you look back at the thing through the storyline, I mean, Steve Austin did say to The Rock going into WrestleMania 17, I need to beat you, Rock, more than you'll ever know. I need to beat you. And it was just a thing that he was not going to not win the WWE Championship on that night. He was willing to, you know, shake hands with Satan himself and join Vince McMahon to become WWE Champion. It meant that much that he would turn his back on everything he believed in throughout the entire Attitude Era, and arguably that's what closed it for all time. And of course, like I say, perhaps not the best thing that went on afterwards. People learned that it was perhaps a mistake that Steve Austin turned heel, but certainly was one of the most unexpected. You dropped a suggestion in the comments there of Kane turning heel back in 2010 over on The Undertaker, of course, which was one of their later feuds that they had from their career standpoints, and Paul Bear saying he'd been waiting 6 years for it was a predictable one. I do agree with you, that was predictable. One that I'm going to give to know, Over the Limit 2012, The Big Show. If I just said Big Show before, you'd have said which heel turn. But, you know, for me, he's had so many, but this one was the most predictable. It was John Cena against, of course, Mr. People Power himself, John Laurinaitis, at the pay-per-view, which main evented that pay-per-view, by the way, in I believe it was like a, you know, no DQ match, whatever stipulation wanted to give it. And, yeah, the Big Show came in. Of course, he was fired on Raw by Johnny going into the pay-per-view, and I just remember saying, I remember working with my friend, and he was my boss at the time. He was a big wrestling fan. I just turned to him and said, Big Show's coming back at that pay-per-view and he's turning heel. I just felt it was plain as day that was what was going to happen, and lo and behold, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, Big Show came in, knocked out John Cena, and John Laurinaitis picked up the victory. So that one for me, I think, when I look at calling some heel turns, we do see them here and there, but for me, that was the most blatant, obvious one that I think I could call. Next question comes from Scott Robertson. What is your favourite match from a TLC pay-per-view? Great question, this one, and I must say that I had a couple of answers immediately in mind, but I did look through the archives just to make sure I didn't miss anything out. My choice for you today isn't actually a match we were supposed to have at a TLC pay-per-view. In fact, it wasn't even a TLC match either. It was a match with no build, Finn Balor against AJ Styles from 2017. Now, of course, at the time, of course, it was supposed to be Finn Balor against Sister Abigail. Who remembers that bad variation of the Bray Wyatt character? Thank goodness they've moved it onto the Fiend since then. But, of course, Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns were pulled from the event due to illness, and thank goodness they made a speedy recovery. But we got instead Finn Balor against AJ Styles, and like I say, AJ was flown in from, I believe he was like in South America at the time, so he'd had little to no sleep. He flew overnight into coming for this show, and yeah, it was an epic match between these two. I thoroughly loved it, and for me, we've never had this match before in WWE or since, and it really is a standout match between these two. I do recommend anyone looking to go back to watch some matches from TLC before we go to this year's TLC. Even though it's not a TLC match, that is one I recommend to go back and check out because I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's personally my favourite. As a TLC match, of course, Roman Reigns versus King Corbin. I'm joking. I would actually go with the 2012 one, the Shield's debut match against Team Hell No and Ryback. For me, that was a brutal six-man tag team TLC match, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And of course, I believe the Shield's first official match in WWE as well. So that's definitely one to go and check out and would be my answer from a TLC match standpoint. Dan, the man Williams, with our next question now, and congrats, by the way, Dan, on 200 subscribers on YouTube. The channel has been going less than a few months. It's done so well. What company do you think has had the best year in 2020? WWE and AEW have been very strong, but I have to say Impact has risen to the mainstream this year. The hype for Slammiversary and now the Omega storyline, and they have improved their roster loads. Well, a lot of heavy praise there for Impact Wrestling there. And I think Impact's had a great year. I think all the companies, to some degree, have had a great year. And I think we have to be thankful the fact that, every company has managed to still entertain us through what has been a very difficult 2020. So I don't want to be too harsh on anybody. I think that all companies have had their great moments. Of course, some have had some questionable moments, of course. I mean, it's pro wrestling. It's a very, Marmite kind of thing. We love it or we hate it with certain segments that we see, and it's great to see such creativity. But for me, my answer for you has to be, from a start to finish, AEW, because AEW for me, storyline telling, this has been their first full year of Dynamite, and there's been so many great moments through the show. We've had some 5-star classics, we've had some great storylines, particularly Kenny Omega's, team with Hangman Page, the way they were carried through with the Young Bucks and FTR. We've had, great moments with MJF, with the Inner Circle of Chris Jericho. All sorts of things have been going on. John Moxley's had a great championship run, and we've had some great surprising debuts come in. It's been wacky, it's been wild, it's been fun, and more than not, a lot of the time, what I find great with AEW is that in their storylines, a lot of the time, yes, someone has to win and someone has to lose, but unlike WWE, I find that with AEW, a lot of the time, superstars aren't protected in defeat, where in WWE, they can fall from a certain position in the card straight off a TV or straight to the lower card. There's so many superstars for me, like you look at Ricochet, for example, who was in a championship match in February, went to complete obscurity by the summer. He's on Raw now, but he's part of the main event crew, arguably. Just shows how quick you can fall from grace in WWE, where AEW, they seem to keep everyone with some form of credibility. Impact Wrestling has had a great year as well. I can't argue. I think a lot of people who weren't invested in Impact Wrestling are now once again, perhaps or for the first time. So it's great to see Impact, their stock is rising. As we spoke throughout this video, AEW versus Impact is mega exciting and arguably could be a game-changing storyline when we look back in the history of wrestling. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly different elements there, but AEW is involved with that storyline as well. So for me, I'm going to give AEW as an answer, but certainly it's very difficult to give a standout company of the year. But all three have continued to entertain us throughout 2020. And yeah, I'm eternally grateful for that, because certainly 2020 has been a difficult year for many. And it's great that we've had pro wrestling that has continued throughout, where a lot of things that perhaps we have enjoyed hasn't been around all the time. I'm a big, football fan, or soccer for use in America. And of course we had, about a 3 or 4 month break due to the pandemic that was going on. And then football we've had without fans, back since. And we've started now to get a couple of found some fans back in certain games, but of course we had a big break where we didn't have that. So pro wrestling is continued throughout, and yeah, very grateful for it. Austin Whitley of our next question now, and he was watching some 1996-97 WCW, and it made him wonder, who are my favourite cruiserweights from that era? Ironically enough, I have been doing the same thing. I just spoke in the last question about missing football. I mean, this is what I was doing to fill the time. I went through and said, I'm going to start Nitro and work my way through. And I've got myself through to 1997. And I've got to say, the Cruiserweight division, the best Cruiserweight division ever. There's never been a Cruiserweight division like it. I mean, you look at the likes Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero's in there, Dean Malenko, La Parka, Psychosis, Super Callow. There's so many you can go through there. Hector Garza, I mean, the list is endless. And I mean, for me, I thoroughly enjoyed the Cruiserweight division. To give particular favourites, I have a few that come to mind. One I didn't even mention there for a second, Juventud Guerrera. I just found him really cool back in the day as a child growing up. I used to really enjoy watching his matches and the high-flying, aspect of it. Rey Mysterio back then was my favourite and still is kind of now, really, when I look at the matches then, especially with the likes of, we mentioned there, Juventud, Psychosis, those matches and Dean Malenko as well, they were kind of like matches you'd watch now and think, God, how could they do that then? They were like head and shoulders above the rest of the stuff that they could do. So Rey Mysterio really is one that stands out for me. But one that I appreciated then, but I really appreciate now is none other than Dean Malenko. You can just see the technical style that this guy has in the Cruiserweight division as well, working with that high-flying style also. Malenko had a strategy throughout his matches, and you could see that every move chained together. There was a purpose from what linked everything eventually to the Texas Cloverleaf to pick up the victory, and is why he's one of my most underrated wrestlers in history, because Malenko was an absolute star. So for me, I think Rey Mysterio is my favourite, but Dean Malenko certainly is up there in the conversation as well. But Eddie Guerrero, I mean, so many, you can't leave them all out, really. I mean, Eddie Guerrero right now recently turned heel in the period that I'm watching now in WCW, and you're starting to see what becomes this, character that evolves into Latino heat when he goes to WWE and onto the Eddie that we love. So, I mean, we can see all this with these great characters and superstars, but it's very difficult to pinpoint one. But I suppose if I had to pinpoint, Mysterio was back then, perhaps right now watching it through now, I think maybe I'd give the shout to Dean Malenko. But let me know yours in the comments below, because I'm enjoying watching WCW from those days right now, and it's certainly it's nice to have a little bit of 90s conversation from time to time, definitely on this channel. So let's get some nostalgia going in the comments. So let me know your favourite Cruiserweight in the comments below. Chloe Price Boy and Tricky Boy here again with another tricky question. Who does the best cutter, excluding Randy Orton and DDP? We're taking the two best ones away here, so goodness, it's hard to pick here, but there are a couple of superstars that do some great cutters. So I'm going to go and say, first off, Cody Rhodes, I think, does a great cutter in his matches. I do quite think he executes it quite well, especially when he comes, flying off the middle rope. But my official answer I'm going to give for you for this one this week is Jay Lethal. The lethal injection, the way that he comes off the ropes and delivers that, certainly for me is my favourite, and certainly has put away a lot of superstars when you look back at Ring of Honor, and certainly he's a multi-time Ring of Honor World Champion, currently a Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion. Great with a pure style as well. Jay Lethal hits a perfect cutter in my opinion. So for me, Jay Lethal will be my answer for you here today. Last question comes from Jamie, the controversial one, Holmes, and this is probably his most outlandish question. Are we heading for a King Corbin Mysterio family double turn? Let's hear him out here. Murphy beat Corbin after Dominic interfered, which is true, and Murphy is supposed to be a face, and Corbin brought back the Forgotten Sons to even the numbers, which is usually a face move. You're spot on. The thing is, here is the thing. Everything you're saying makes sense, because those are traditional moves for baby faces and heels. The issue is here that WWE feels like they book most of their superstars these days as a shade of grey. They've almost said that faces and heels don't really exist anymore, and it kind of feels like that certain things go with the storylines of how they want to do when they want to do it. Maybe they wanted to find a way to bring the Forgotten Sons in as Corbin's Knights this week on SmackDown, and thought that this was the best way to bring them in. And like you say, it's questionable booking if you want to do so. I still don't believe we're getting a double turn. I still don't believe Corbin will ever go back to being a babyface again. I certainly don't think the Mysterios, now that we have Rey and Dominic together, should go heel. If anything, they should be going for the tag team division, have that feel-good story as tag team champions. So for me, I don't see the double turn, but I certainly understand why and where this question is coming from, because the proof is in the booking from what we see there. I mean, those are natural face and heel moves, but no, I still don't see that double turn happening. I just think it's poor booking from WWE. But hopefully it leads to something exciting. At this particular moment, I do think we're going to get a 6-man tag team match for the TLC kickoff, if I had to predict at this particular time. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching Ask SCW as always. Make sure as well to go and check out Wrestling Customs 24/7 as well for custom championship belts. Maybe that's a great stocking filler for you for this Christmas. They're doing international delivery now. They've got WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, and many more championship belts for your action figures. Go and check out their website now. It should be on your screen right now. And go and follow them as well on social media. But that's all from me as well. If you are watching this before NXT TakeOver War Games, the predictions are there for you now. As well as to say that also 15 dream matches AEW versus Impact Wrestling. Go and check out that video as well. And coming up tomorrow with the NXT TakeOver War Games review show. So make sure to go check that out. Great excuse to go and subscribe here on SCW. Closing in, getting near 700 subscribers. If I'm not mistaken, I believe I'm 11 or 12 away from that. So would love to hit the 700 milestone before Christmas. So please, if you're watching for the first time, if you enjoyed, please subscribe. Hit the bell for all notifications. Those notifications to all as well. You can be notified when everything is released as and when it comes out on this wrestling YouTube channel. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a great day. You've been watching SCW here on YouTube.